on the map?
Negative.
Or is that changed?
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, you may want to pull that stuff off the schedule, the calendar on the engine.
I am bleeding like a motherfucker. Son of a bitch.
What did you do?
I got eczema on my right elbow, and I was just picking at it and freaking took a little piece off, and it's bleeding like I wouldn't believe. You couldn't believe. I've never done this before. A little flap of skin came off. I think putting moisturizer on it makes it worse. Anyway, one-handed.
Well, if it makes it worse for you, Squid, you can put the moisturizer on me.
Jeez.
Behave, woman. Don't be coming in here.
Oh, too funny. All right. So, oh, hang on just a minute. All right. So let's talk briefly about this. So there's a couple of tanks I'm going to sideline for tonight. The CIA has looked into our activities and said, no, don't do these two. We want to talk about those. I said, okay. I'm continuing with the other ones, though, because I need to make progress on this.
Yeah, I've seen that post.
So, tonight's going to be talking about the IS-7s. We'll be talking about some mediums and Sturv 103Bs and some other tanks. But we'll start with the IS-7 and WZ-111-5As. We can kill two birds with one stone because they're very similar tanks. However, as a caller and a player, you need to recognize that there are some differences. So we're going to go ahead and head over to Golf 3 and the WZ-5As. Go ahead and head over to Charlie 3, over towards that window. So, one of the first distinctions that we need to make about IS-7s and WZ-111-5As is the turret. So, the turret on IS-7s are pretty damn beefy. Even from the side, they're pretty beefy. The one place where the IS-7 is lackluster is on the hull. The WZ-111-5A's turret is not nearly as strong as an IS-7. So, what that means for the WZ-111-5A being more squishy, it is not a good idea. If I want to hold this corner, I can sit here and I can expose my turret all day long, and they can shoot my turret all day long, and I don't have to worry about it. Whereas that WZ-111-5A will have weak points. So he's got that nice big old commander's hatch on one side, and then he's got the other hatch on the other. Those stick up. Those are weak points. Those are green even from here. So if I get a lucky shot, he's still going to take that damage. You notice that on the turret for the IS-7, both of those hatches are actually recessed. So you're
Not gonna move.
You're not going to get shot through the typical weak point that would be a commander's turret. So that means that IS-7s are a great defensive playing tank since they don't have that weak point. Where IS-7s start getting in trouble is if they have to rotate their turret to fire on a target, and I go starting to throw the back end of my turret towards the enemy, I'm going to get punched for that. If I start going out, since I have this pike nose, and I start showing flats, I'm going to get punched for it. So I have to be careful with how I'm using this armor, but otherwise an IS-7 is a phenomenal tank to have sit and play area denial and sit and trade shots. I've got a decent reload. 11.3 second reload is not bad. Now, here's one area where the WZ-111-5A shines. WZ-111-5A has a much faster reload and better DPM than an IS-7 does. What's your reload?
9.6.
That's almost 2 seconds faster. I have
Yeah, I'm at 9 1/4.
490 damage on an APCR round. What the WZ-111-5A gets is a heat round. So let's talk about the difference of the APCR at this kind of a distance versus the heat round. That heat round is going to maintain its penetration irregardless of the distance. It will have a slight drop, but it's kind of negligible. Whereas my APCR is still going to drop. My APCR is actually still more effective at closer range than it is further away. The other thing that I have to deal with is I have to deal with angled armor. So that turret is actually going to block everything unless I put a shot into one of those hatches on Squid. Whereas if he gets a weak point and I give him a flat, it doesn't matter where he hits with that heat round. It's either going to go through or it's going to completely bounce. Heat is hit or miss. The disadvantage to that heat round is if he accidentally puts that shot in my tracks, he ain't doing jack shit, other than maybe a track shot.
Yep.
So whereas on IS-7, I can still touch his tracks, but I can penetrate through that lower hole and still get the damage that way. Whereas, like Firewolf, he's sitting right over there. I've got a perfect money shot on that front sprocket to do a full pen and full damage and a track. Heat won't do that. If I were to fire that heat round in that same place, I'm getting nothing but that track shot. The other thing that the WZ-111-5A has that's similar to the IS-7, it also has a pike nose. It's a little bit of a smaller pike nose, but it still has it. The other issue that the WZ-111-5A has is its lower glacis is actually weaker than that of the IS-7. If I'm good with my IS-7, I can get these positioned at a location where I can hide one of my flats, and I can expose my lower glacis a little bit if I need to work for a shot. I'm overexposed right now, but I can have this angle on my lower glacis, and I will more likely bounce a shot. Now, in the case of a heat round from a WZ, that's not going to be the case. It's still weak enough that it's going to pen. But those are some big differences. So let's talk about the speed differences. The power to weight ratio on a WZ-111 is actually faster than that of the IS-7. It's higher, I should say. That means he's going to get up to speed quicker than I am. So as far as being able to go into a push, so if I were going to marry a couple of tanks, I was going to have a different composition. I wanted to send some mediums in, lead a charge, have them spin, and have a faster tank with good DPM follow in behind them, but a better hit point pool than mediums. I'm sending a WZ-111-5A because it's got 2,200 hit points and can put that DPM into those tanks, and as long as those people in those WZs are competent and understand their heat rounds, then they're going to be waiting for those flat angle shots where they know they're going to pen, and they're going to keep it out of the tracks. And then it becomes a really effective combination. Whereas if I need that little extra bit of health, I care about getting up close and playing area denial. I need to move along up and get into a defensive position. I need to cut this distance down. I'm taking an IS-7 and I'm going to be playing this area. So IS-7s can push an attack, but you're better off, if you need to attack with something, you're better off doing it with 111-5A rather than an IS-7. Having a combination allows you flexibility of a group of IS-7s and 5As means that you have some attackers, but you also have some defenders. So those tanks should go in with the understanding that IS-7s are going to take the front and brawl on a corner. So I would be up here brawling on a corner, and I would have a 511 going out and around, and I'm going to be right here, not afraid to take that hit because I've got that little extra bit of hit points, and I'm going to be trying to help farm those WZ-111-5As. So, that being said, those are some key differences in the way that WZ-111-5As and IS-7s play. Any comments, questions, suggestions about the WZ-111-5As and the IS-7s? One thing that can be said for IS-7s is you can get them up to full spotting capabilities, and they can actually go post up on a corner like Prokhorovka. They can go over to the 5 line and go up there and actually spot while holding that position, since they can go over max view range. However, not many people have crews like that. Fate is one of the people I know has a crew like that.
That's a perfect shot there. Ow! Wow.
You want me to wiggle for you? Was
Oh yeah, shake that like
All right.
put one up in there.
What you mean a crew like that, like a 6-part crew with recon and situation?
Yes, I do. That's exactly what I mean. Plus a directive.
Yeah, I got that crew too.
Plus full camo.
Yeah.
And I got full
Brothers in
camo.
arms.
I got that
Because
too.
if you're gonna post up with something like that, you need to have everything available to you.
So let's take another map for example and explanation.
Hang on a second.
On rolls.
Hey, fire. See if you have any shots on me. Am I lit?
Wait a minute, where you at?
You're all lit.
I'm
Everybody's
front.
lit right
I'm
now.
front IS-7 out here.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
because
all
we
lit.
have
Yes.
Dragon sitting right
He did
next
sit
to
right
us.
behind you.
Do you have any shots on me?
If I can hit you, it's right inside your bottom track. Now I do not on your tracks or your belly pan from where I'm at. But
Who's
All
what,
right.
in the purple?
I'm
No.
the one in
That's
front
Chaco
of the
in the
purple.
purple.
I was
No.
just wanting to see how my cornerstone
Yeah.
was with
Well, it
this.
might
So
go in through there.
that
Right
brings
there,
up a
you're
good
alright,
point.
but the
Something
next-
else I need to talk to about IS-7s. WZ-111 5As don't echelon nearly as well because of the weaker armor. The steeper pike nose is better for the echelon on the IS-7, like what I do on Paris, because of that steeper pike. So if I do a good job setting up and my players do a good job and my cornerstone understands his job, we can literally make these steep angles line up perfectly, and they will not have good shots on the lower hole, and we get to poke out and they don't have a flat.
the only one I cannot hurt right now is double the way.
Well,
they're lined
yes,
up.
because this is a straight on. This would not be how we would
yeah,
be.
it's a bad.
We would not
spot,
be
'cause
echeloning this corner.
Where he's at right now. Where he's at right
It
now.
blocks it. That corner.
Yeah.
It's the only corner that you're showing.
Yep.
And it blocks it.
So that's where one of the advantages to the IS-7 goes as far as defensive positions and holding.
Yep.
Whereas the WZ-5A cannot do this. He will get pounded. So, as similar as they are, and as much as we like to say, yeah, they're interchangeable, they're really not. There are times...
Oh no! Once you put a shot through my lower plate, I'm ammo wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you put a shot through, it's like an automatic. Put a shot through my lower plate, I'm ammo wrecked. Period. It's an automatic thing. It's really frustrating.
So, anyways,
That's why I don't play this tank. I don't play this tank.
that's pretty much what I've got for you for WZ-111 5As and IS-7s. We'll go ahead and swap into different tanks. So, my group over here, we're going to kill the mole here first.
What?
Death to the mole!
I gotta at least shoot somebody else. How to get away with that? We get him.
And now we're going to go
Fire.
push on those WZ-111 5As because they're nice
Straight
and
up.
squishy.
Screw it. Let's get this over with.
Go ahead and push on them. We just got to go kill them so we can get out of the room.
I'm going right in. Screw it.
Notice that the armor value, when it came to the RAM on the WZ, was much higher for the IS-7. Oh, I wanted that.
Thank you.
Alright.
I'll be right back.
Alright, so the next group of tanks we're going to talk about, we're going to start talking about some tank destroyers. So we often see a lot of times where people will misuse tank destroyers. So let's talk about the Sturv 103.
Hey, Slange, pick me up.
Yeah, we'll grab you, Wander. I've
map are you
been
gonna
streaming
run?
and recording the
Yeah.
earlier part of this as well. We can stay on Himmelsdorf for this.
I got my Badger
Grab
and
your
an
E3 for me.
I know those were on the list. I think Squid has a Badger. Oh, I know he has a Badger.
And then I'll grab the Sturv. Actually, we might change the map if we're talking about Sturvs.
Yeah, that's not a good map for Stir. It is for E3 and Badger.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that'd be a good
There's
combination for both. Cliff would be a good one.
Cliff or get one city in the circle, and then you have the field on the
We'll
left.
do Cliff.
Yeah.
Alright, so...
Shut it.
User joined your channel.
Latch it.
So
We are doing caller training at the moment, but I'm letting people audit.
Oh, okay. If you need me, I'll be up in the Big Ben.
Sounds good.
User left your channel.
Alright, so let's start off down at Foxtrot 2, Delta 2. We'll talk about the 110 E3
Alright, I'll be
first.
there in a half hour.
So 110 E3 has one major weak point frontally, and that's his lower glacis, and even that is still pretty tough. There's actually, it's kind of a bubble on the front, if you will. It's a little exaggerated using the analogy of a bubble, but it is sloped. So you have to be careful as to where you're hitting on that lower glacis. If you are a tank like an IS-7 that has a lower end pen, you will potentially bounce a shot, and it's a very bad thing to be bouncing shots on a 110 E3. More than likely, he's going to be fully hull down, and you won't even get the opportunity. So, over here on this rock here, for intents and purposes, we're going to pretend like he's fully hull down. He can't actually fully go hull down off this rock, but we're going to just use it for the purpose of what kind of a role a 110 E3 plays. 110 E3s, by their nature, are a slow tank. Your top speed is about 25-30. Yeah, that's usually what they're running around at. They're usually doing about 750 damage for their alpha, is pretty average, but they will roll higher. They can roll up to about 850, almost 900. They're a little shy of that 900. Their low rolls tend to be about 6. So they really hurt. They have a great amount of pen. What they are lacking is they are lacking in accuracy. They are not a good long-distance shooting tank destroyer. So if I was expecting my 110 E3 from Echo 2 to be firing all the way into the back at Juliet 2 or Kilo 2, I have picked the wrong tank for the job, because now I'm hoping and praying to RNG, which the 110 E3 has a decent reload. What's your reload with that crew, Fire? 14.6 seconds. As we recall, we're sitting at about a 9.6 second on a WZ. That WZ, that DPM, if he pushes him, he can get around and he can start farming him well before the 110 E3 is going to get 3 shots off. That's a significant reload. 110 E3s need to make their shots count. 110 E3s do a good job on defensive positions to deter an enemy from pushing. So, if I had two 110 E3s, let's say I had one here, I had one over here, I would have enough of a deterrent between those two 110 E3s, I could probably keep 4 tanks from pushing. If they have more than that, I'm going to need more tanks over here to discourage them.
Especially if they alternate their shots.
Because then it drops it to essentially a 7-second reload. But that's where the 110 E3 really shines. They don't shine on redirects. Because if I say 110 E3, I need you to go around the ramp over at Bravo 5, Charlie 5, and I need you to support the hill, it's going to take him probably 30, 40, maybe even a minute to get all the way up there and in position and ready to fire. That's a long time, especially when it comes to this map. This map is all about quick redirects and having good initial intel. So that's too long. If I stuck a 110 E3 over an Echo 2, that's where he's going to play for the entirety of the game. The better option at that point, if I have a tank that is slow like that, is to say, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to redirect you back around, so either he stays where he's at, or I'd have to push him up to the donut to try and get his gun into the fight, and he'd have to come around and get shots from the back over at Echo 3. Let's then segue into the Sturv 103B. Sturv 103B has fantastic camo, whereas 110E3 doesn't have that great of camo. It's not bad, but it ain't great either. So Sturv 103B is a great stealthy tank destroyer. It is not a tank destroyer, however, that can take a hit. My armor value is only decent sometimes because of my angle. As you guys know, my camo is really high, so if I post up behind bushes, I will go invisible. Especially once I go into siege mode and I set up my camo net and my binocs, I can pretty much spot for myself. However, the big issue is that the only class of tanks that has moving camo is light tanks. The minute I hit the W or the S key, my camo value drops significantly. And if I get spotted during that time, I'm dead. So, if you have a Sturv in a position that is camoed up, leave him there if moving is going to get him killed. Because you will lose that tank. The other thing that the Sturv 103B has, it has a great amount of DPM. My reload is 5.9 seconds, and I'm hitting for about 400, 450 on an average shot. I don't have a whole lot of variance on my alpha. My low is somewhere around 375, and my high is about 500. So, but what I make up for is accuracy. I have one of the most accurate guns in the game, and I make up for it in DPM. The other thing that I have is I have fantastic penetration. Most of the time in this tank, with 308 penetration and a standard APCR round for my regular ammo, I don't have to go to my APCR. But if I'm going against some particularly tough targets, I'll swap to my APCR. The other advantage that you have for a Sturv is that I actually do turn pretty quickly. Not quick enough to outrun a medium. So since I'm not fast enough to outrun a medium, if you leave a Sturv 103 by itself, you are seriously jeopardizing and risking a Sturv 103B. You should have a support tank to make sure that a Sturv 103B cannot get flanked, even if it's only one. Because if they see a support tank with a Sturv 103B, they're not going to focus the Sturv. They're going to focus the support tank so they can run around the Sturv and not take damage. Because that's the bigger threat at that point. So that Sturv needs to understand that, hey, if something pushes, I got to kill it. I'm not worried about me and running away. I got to kill it. Because at that point, you've been lit. And you need to try and keep your support alive, because if they send more in, you're done. So, the other thing that I would say about Sturvs is Sturvs are limited on their terrain to a certain extent, but not nearly as much as a 110E3 is. My suspension, the way this tank works, allows me to really play some ridges and almost hide the entirety of my tank. My weak spot at that point then becomes my commander's hatch. There is a sloped part, which is the engine deck, and then there's a flat part up there by the commander's hatch. I have to be careful how I angle this. Otherwise, I will get penetrated. If I go up like this, I start exposing my lower glacis, I'm gonna get penetrated.
Oh
So,
my.
Sturv 103Bs are kind of fragile and fickle tanks. You want to stick them in a position where their gun is going to be in the fight. So, for example, if an enemy is going to be doing a 2-3 line push, this is actually not where you want to stick a Sturv. Why? Because if they sent something like an Object 140 to do a quick push that has decent view range, I'm going to get spotted. You want to be putting Sturv 103Bs towards the edge of the draw circle. So you should have a green one and a white one, and then a yellow one if you're running vanilla, like I am. So,
Red,
User
but yeah.
disconnected from your channel.
Uh-oh, Squid disconnected.
let's see if he comes back. Otherwise, I'll continue. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and continue. So, if I want shots on that 2-3 line as they're pushing through, I'm going to be positioning further back towards spawn. I've got the Delta 1, Delta 2 block just barely inside of my render range, which is realistically where they're going to start showing up. I would go into my camo net and binocs here, and then I would have a tank like the E100 up on the corner, and I'm going to be farming for days. They're not going to have an easy time spotting me while I'm here. I've got multiple bushes. I am double bushed, and in fact triple bushed. So that is going to allow me to really work, and that's the kind of role you want your Sturvs in. You can pair two Sturvs and they become incredibly dangerous. You guys have been on Prokhorovka and we've gotten farmed by a Sturv 103B or 2. You guys understand the pain that Sturvs bring with that DPM and that damage. If you don't do something about a Sturv in a location like the one line, you basically cannot push at that point. And then you have to be careful because they are great at absorbing pushes even with that DPM. It's the DPM of a Sturv that makes it lethal. So be careful where you position them and make sure that they have support. So let's talk about the Badger. Badger, for the most part, is actually fairly impenetrable from the front side. The one big glaring and will get penetrated point is the lower hull. The rest of the little modules and flats on the front of the Badger are actually really strong. There's not much of a difference. The one place where you do tend to have a little bit weaker area is on the gun mantlet itself inside of that square. If he's aimed up, then it's going to make it easier for shots through there. But if he's angled at all, then I can't get through the mantlet, and I can have to shoot through the base of the gun. But now that he's moved his gun again, those shots are gone. So pay attention to that when you're dealing with a Badger front on. If he's hull down, watch where that gun is pointed and watch where those flats are. Badgers have a fantastic DPM, and they have fairly good accuracy as well. They're slow. So that being said, they're good for hold down and defensive positions where you need DPM. So you can pair them with 110 E3s nicely. They spin. They are good support tanks. That DPM paired on a push isn't a bad thing, but I wouldn't recommend them for a push because of that lower glacis. Everybody knows to shoot it, and everybody's going to penetrate it, and they will get killed quickly. If you intend to push, then your tank destroyers, all of them, need to play in a particular fashion. So let's say Wolfman was going to start pushing down that 2 line. He's going to start moving, and I'm going to hang back just a tad. Probably a square or 2, so that I am not in the front and I am not the attention. If he starts pushing on Squid, I'm going to be supporting from here and firing from back here, and then as he gets ready to go on his next targets, I'm going to drop out of my siege mode. If I am a Badger, I'm going to start moving forward straight off the get-go once he's got maybe half health left on a tank for the last tank. And then I'm going to be caught up, and he will have that tank dead, and then I get set up on the corner to follow around his next section. tank destroyers at that point are support tanks. So Badgers are going to play similar to that 110E3. They also use an APCR round. So they are better close brawlers, but they can do some long distance work with their accuracy. Let's talk about Death Star and FV4005. They are not meta tanks. They are incredibly squishy. And Death Star does not have good gun depression. Where those tanks shine is they shine because of their HESH rounds. Because of the fact that the penetration does tend to be lower than even their standard AP rounds, it's the fact that it acts like an HE round and will do damage every time. But it's the high rolls. Everybody loves 1800, 2000 damage. That can be pretty devastating. However, that's a high roll, and that's not very often. And you have to have it on just the right spot. When you're talking about 280 pen for a HESH round, that's not a lot. And once again, that HESH round acts just like the heat. You put that shot in the tracks, and you get the track shot, and you get some HE damage, but it's going to be like 500-600, which is like, really? I'm going on to a 24-second reload for this? That reload will get those tanks killed. The minute of 4005 is spotted, it is killed. Jagdpanzer E100 fires a heat round for its gold ammunition. That heat round has 420 pen. It will pen anything, but once again, keep it out of the tracks. Its weak points is the lower glacis, and its superstructure is a little on the weaker side too. But there's an observation port on the top of the tank. But tanks like IS-7s with their lower end pen are still going to struggle. Sturves, farm them all day long. They aren't particularly fast to turn, so get in close to them and make them spin, and you will kill them for days. The other tank destroyer we need to talk about, so I need somebody to swap into a 268V4. Well, it's not me.
Whatever that's going to be.
The only person with one.
Oh, no, there's two of us in here with one.
Oh. Pardon me.
Yes.
Actually, we have four of them now, I believe, in the clan.
Yeah, there's four of my clan.
Squid, Chibi, me, and Gingy.
I'm working for mine.
Yep.
I'm on the 8.
263 is a fantastic tank, though.
Mm-hmm. I had it as a tier 10, and it was alright as a tier 10. I just didn't like the slope of the armor.
Yeah, you got to try and go hold down with it. It kind of plays like a Badger in that sense, except for faster and less gun depression. Yep. Badgers actually have a fair amount of gun depression, too. So they can kind of ridge hunt. They can't quite ridge hunt like a super conk, but... Alright, exactly. So here we go.
Are you guys... Wait, what? Are you in a room?
So are you.
Yeah, we're in the room still.
Oh.
I clicked on the garage tab and grabbed the tank I wanted, selected it, and then I hit the team training battle tab.
Yep, gotcha. I just hit the word battle at the top because back in.
I had to drop the game. I'm having some heating issues, evidently. That's why it shut off on me a couple minutes ago.
Heating issues?
Yeah.
Overheating.
It's overheating. It's done it twice now in a week.
Same area?
I think my I think my one fan is getting ready to shit the bed. Does it in the summer.
Alright, so we'll meet back over at Echo 2.
other day on Brock, when I was in my Death Star, we were shooting against 268-4s. I was actually doing
I believe it.
pretty decent damage with Hesh.
Because it's an HE round.
Oh, you're gonna.
I mean, it's Hesh, but...
Yeah, it's almost,
So, let's talk about the
because-
268 V4. 268 V4 has some pretty good armor, but where the 268 V4 gets most of its armor is because of the angle of the armor, which is why Death Star is rather effective against them. Because that HE round, first off, carries over distance very well as far as the penetration, and two, it doesn't care about angle of impact nearly as much. So, that means that if he puts it into the lower glacis, it's going to be far more effective. The weak points for tanks that do not have either A heat round, B, Hesh, or a good HE pen, you are talking about the telescopic rangefinder, that little T-looking thing up top. And then over on the right-hand side, there is a wee bit of a turret that you could shoot too, but it's very small. You're better off with the telescopic rangefinder. The other place... Yeah, you can pen beside the gun. The other place that you would be better off to shoot, it's a very small lower glacis, and I don't mean the first lower glacis. You see he has the upper glacis, he has a lower glacis right there. It looks like, oh, that should be flat. That's pretty damn well armored. Down underneath that first lower glacis, there is a second lower glacis. That is fairly weak. That is usually a place where you can penetrate through on a Object 268 V4. But to be perfectly honest, if you're frontally going after an Object 268 V4, I'd probably go after the telescopic rangefinder myself. If he is angled, then you can go through the track wells. But that's a pretty tough shot. I would have a devil of a time getting through those track wells with him moving like that. It would be a real bastard. So, if I have any speed at all, and I do mean any speed at all, he's a fixed turret tank destroyer. I don't want to get rammed because he is extremely armored. I have to outplay this guy, and I have to keep a little bit of a distance. If he gets backed up and he tries to ram me, then I'm going to lose a track. The good news is if I rotate my tracks through, it buys me some time. So you should never stay on the front of an Object 268 V4 unless you are a tank that is assigned to keep him busy so that people can go around. You want to go around 268 V4s. So, for example, Squid called Corellia the other night, and he wanted us to push into the bowl. When I was in charge of those mediums and calling for those guys, I had you guys push past the armor on the 268 V4s and farm them from the side. Getting those tanks out, they have a good reload on them. They're sitting at... What are you sitting at on your crew, Firewolf?
1467.
Yeah, that's
right
actually
now.
kind of a slow reload
That's
for
only
a
a two-perk
268
crew.
V4. You'll normally see those guys sitting around
Yeah.
a 13-second
what I
reload
said,
for
it's
a
a two-perk.
650 alpha, which is actually very good. It's a nice balance of high alpha damage, good penetration, and high alpha, good penetration, good reload. Thank you, DPM. Alright, so where 268 V4s do not shine, they have no gun depression whatsoever. So you catch them on a hill, you've got a major advantage against the 268 V4. So that also means that you should either A, if you have to send a 268 V4 to a place where there's a hill, you either A, need to get them to come over the top. So let's take Malinovka, for example. That's a good map for this demonstration. Malinovka has that hill up on the northern side of the map. If you have 268 V4s and you want to take that hill fast, you then basically send them up to a area where they're about to crest, and you try and either A, get the enemy to come over the top to you, or B, you push up and over and have a bunch of fast tanks. If you cannot do that in a amount of time, you are forced into a defensive position with 268 V4s. They're great brawlers, they're fast, they're nimble, they can really support, but 268 V4s cannot go alone. The same reason that this 215B183, all I have to do is get past the gun, he doesn't have a full rotating turret, he's done. Bottom line, he's done. You have to send support vehicles with a 268 V4. Doesn't matter whether it's an IS-7, doesn't matter whether it's a Object 140 or a 907, or even Batchats. They have to have support tanks. Otherwise, they are perfectly happy to go in and brawl once they have those support tanks. Your support tanks need to be looking for those vehicles that are trying to flank around on your 268 V4s. That means that if I... Just sit still for me, Firewolf. If I were trying to outplay a 268 V4,
Yep.
that means that his
Come out
mediums that
here.
are with him need to be focusing me down and preventing me from taking away the alpha and the DPM of that 268 V4. His gun is effectively out of the fight. So that also means that since that Firewolf couldn't shoot me, he needs to be shooting different targets. He needs to go, okay, I have to trust my support tanks to get this asshole off my butt. So he's going to be shooting at a 268, or not a 268, the 215B183, IS-7, Sturv 103B, whatever his gun can still work. He's not going to sit there and spend his time trying to deal with me. He might back up into me and try and bust my track so that his buddies can whack me and then pull forward so that more people can get shots and while I'm stuck, or for ram damage and try and get me dead. But his focus is no longer me. His focus is the other tanks.
Or flip you from
So
close
that
enough.
as soon as I'm dead, now his support tanks can go in and clean up. Especially if it's something with a clip, like a Batchat 25 ton. Now that makes those low health targets a priority. I come in, clean up, get their DPM and their guns out of the fight, and we work that overmatch. That's part of what I was doing on Corellia when I was calling for those mediums. Is I made sure that those people up there had those targets where they were able to work them down. So that's 268 V4s in a nutshell.
The other thing, if you are going face
Yes,
to face
absolutely.
with the V4, if I may land,
Yes,
if you're going
Yep.
in on them, track them.
because they have no gun arc
Especially
whatsoever.
if you're one-on-one to get by them.
It's very small.
Or two-on-one. Yep.
Yep.
Shoot
And
for
even
the
if you
tracks
have
and
to,
take
even if
them
you have
out.
to do it twice, do it twice.
Yep.
Do once when you get past them and do it again, because they might repair it. You know, that's odds
Yep.
are they will repair it. But yeah, once you're behind him,
Yeah.
he's done.
So
It's-
playing
it's a
frontally
over
off a
done with,
268 V4 is
conversation.
it can be done, but you should really be trying to get around them.
In a map like this, you're going to see someone like me in a 68 V4 hugging this rock wall, so you can only get to two sides of me. I'm going to back it in. I'm going to keep it so.
Because
I've only gotta
ideally,
protect two
if I'm
sides.
going one-on-one with the 268 V4, that means I have to make every one of my shots count as I'm trying to get around here, and I'm going to be
Yep.
going for a track shot, and then I'm going to be
Yep.
trying to put the rest of my clip in, and then I'm going to take a shot, and I'm going to have to go for the other side. So he stands
Yep.
a very good chance
Yep,
that
and once
he's
you're
going to do
behind
a
me, I'm
number
done.
on my health, even if I kill him. There's also a chance that if RNG is unkind to me in these shots, and I'm not paying attention to where I'm putting them, I'm going to run out on my clip, and I'm going to die. So, be very careful about how you're playing with those 268 V4s trying to kill them, and be very careful about how you're setting them up. Because, again, they have to have those support tanks, and those support tanks that are going with them have to know how to play with them. Because if you have people running in there and they don't understand that role, they're as good as dead. You severely lose the effectiveness of 268 V4s in conjunction with those support tanks.
honestly,
That
my
would be an
opinion, if you
excellent
ran a
choice.
couple
They
of
are
WZ
similar in
111
speed
or,
and power to weight
111
ratio.
5As
Object's a little bit faster,
instead of the
but
mediums.
through the power to weight ratio, but yeah, and you
Yep,
get good
WZ's about the
DPM.
same speed, so they won't outrun them.
Try and go back away from me. I can't catch him.
You're
Takes me a
catching me
while.
slowly.
But
Yeah, I
WZs
got
are a
you.
better option to
Yep.
push on an Object 268v4 than an IS-7. Because of the heat rounds, just keep the shots out of the track,
Yes.
and they've got the speed and the better power to
Keep
weight
tracking.
ratio more than an IS-7. So if you were on a map like Corellia and you know you're going to face them, take the WZs. If you...
Yep. And I think it's almost a
Yeah.
given anymore. There's many clans that have.
But just remember, WZs are squishy, so when it comes to a push on them, you have to really be paying attention and working a cycle of armor.
Yeah. I would say cycle the armor and have them flank behind.
And work that complement.
Offset
Since
their
you've got 268 V4s,
268s.
have the 268 V4s go in there and work on the front end of the 268 V4s while your WZs go around.
Yep. Yep.
But
That's what we
again,
did the other
so
night.
that's
It was
something I'll be
double
covering
on
with the general player population, but it's something you as a caller need to be looking for and going, okay, this is what my players should be doing. This is how they need to play that tank. And so if you see it, great. Give them kudos and props for it. If you don't see it, say, guys, remember that training session that Zion had with you guys and he was talking about this? This is what you need to do. And this is why you need to do it. Give them that reminder. Really be starting to nitpick on those items to make sure that those players are playing the way that they need to. If they're not, it doesn't matter if you called the best strat in the world because they didn't execute. You as a caller have to understand these concepts so that you can get the players to do it and set up your calls to take the best advantage and opportunities of these kind of concepts, strengths and weaknesses of tanks, etc., etc. So anyways, that's the tank destroyers in a nutshell. I'm not going to go into specifics on the 183 or the 4005 because, honestly speaking, those are serious oddball tanks. The Jagdpanzer E100, you'll see it more often, but it doesn't need that much description either.
Line up. Line up with
I'll
me
go
I'll
ahead
run
and
to
do
the
the countdown.
level. I want to see where
So,
you stay with me on your
go
speed.
ahead and get side by side. On go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, I'm going to outpace him, and I'm going to keep even. WZ's pulling ahead a little bit, but if they were behind me, these guys would be
no
screwed.
doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt it's a fast tank.
Because I'd just be right up into
It would be,
Chaco like this.
yeah, and that's a short distance. Think about that for a run to the bowl for Corellia. That's a lot more time to put distance between those IS-7s are seriously going to lag behind.
Yep.
So,
Yep. That's why I was saying about the WZ being
rude. Anyways, so that covers the heavy department as far as IS-7WZ. That covers our tank destroyers. The only group that left that we need to cover that I'm willing to cover is mediums. 140s and 907s, etc., etc. But I intend to do that another night. We've more than enough covered our hour, so I want to take the last 7 minutes and go over questions and comments, concerns, and really open up the floor.
Alright, so here's one from me. If I'm calling, I know we got, what, 3 guys now working on
Correct, the intelligence officers.
base strats to work off of. Right, so they're working on the base strats, but as the callers, it's up to us
Correct.
to come up with the complement we want to work out those strats.
Well,
And how
You
much
will be able
leeway
to
do we
tweak
have?
putting
those
together the
strats
basic
based off what
starting
you
meta
see
strats,
and
Yep.
as you
we're gonna
go
figure
through.
out how to implement that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for instance, say we're doing Prokhorovka, it's a 1-2 line push, 268 fours, and we're throwing mediums.
Yeah, you
We
can do
can
those
change it to
tweaks.
the WZ 111 5As if we have
But
them.
so the reason we're
Yeah.
doing the meta strats for the base
Okay.
though is
I'm
so that those
saying
minor
something like
tweaks
that.
don't throw our player base off, and so that the callers basically what's going to happen is you're going to set up pocket
Right.
callers. If everybody is running off that same base strat and then do minor tweaks,
Right.
then as a pocket caller, I know the general idea of what you're going to go for, and I can really focus on my guys, and the player base understands, and we can really focus on those concepts rather than, okay, he's doing a 1-2 line push, but this guy's doing something way the fuck out there. Okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to play my tank? He's not changing my role that much,
Right.
you know, or he just changed my role a fucking ton. But then I, as a pocket caller, can say, this is the role you need to be playing. If you run into this, you need to switch. Okay, I can really focus on, okay, they're pushing up over the top. Your role is no longer that of a aggressive force. We are on a defensive force, and we need to back up and get consolidated. Oh, it's Prokhorovka. We need to get all of our tanks into this one little valley so that we can focus these guys down. You're now on an offensive role. I can really start to get those details through as I'm paying attention to the general course of action from the main overseeing caller. So that's why we're going for those meta strats to start from with tweaks. For right now, we're going to be starting with the meta.
Together the anti-meta too, or are they just doing the meta?
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right.
I'm all good.
Yeah, you kind of do.
I need a new tank.
It's a good one.
I'm working.
We are lightest on Type
That's a good
5s and 268 V4s, but third place goes to the Super Conch, so.
I'm actually coming up close on the STRVs.
Nice.
I'm in the tier 9, and
The more of those meta
how
tanks
far away.
that you have, the more guaranteed
Yeah,
you are that you're going to get into a battle and be used. So that's my motivating statement to those players who need to go forward and grind tanks. And for example, I'm working that tier 9 and I've got the tier 8 for the Japanese heavy line and the 268 V4. So there is always somebody out there that is willing to pair with you and grind tanks. Take the initiative and say, hey, does anybody want to grind tier 8s? Hey, does somebody want to grind tier 9s? And really focus on working as a platoon, working together inside of the game to maximize the effective gameplay. Oh yeah, and some people will do that just so that they can run credits at the same time, just like he said.
The credits for you.
Ba-dum-bum-bum. Oh yeah, and the other thing is that we've got clan-wide boosters that we're going to be setting up. Those are great times to be pairing your boosters with the clan-wide boosters. I'll give you an example. With the current boosters that we have, there's a 500% booster to free XP. Free tanks like that free XP, you can either save it and then convert it, which will help you on your grinds, or you can channel it back into the crew for getting up to a 5-perk crew, 4-perk crew, whatever. Really expediting that. And then we're sitting at a tier 11 booster, which is 100% for 2 hours. So, 2. So now you've got a 100%
many
bonus. You've got a premium
Wow.
tank that's going to up your percentage of money incoming. I think it's about a 50% increase, if I'm not mistaken. So that's 150% from your tank plus the clan booster. Plus, if you have a 50% personal booster, you're now at a 200% bonus to your income. If you're platooning, you're going to get a wee bit of income bonus. If you're in a stronghold, you're going to get a bonus, and you'll get the 100%. However, if you're running puppies, you'll only get 30 off that booster, but that's still a lot. Yes.
30 can be huge. Back at Christmas time in, what the hell was it, Squid? In 3 weeks, I went from 6 million up to almost 35 million just running credit boosters with the boosters that were running, which was
Uh-huh.
30 to 40%.
Uh-huh.
But I played nothing but tier 8 tanks.
So,
Also.
and then be conscious
It
of
was all
which
tier 8
tanks you're
money
running,
tanks the
because
whole
some
time
are
to get
better
that high.
at bringing in the credits, whereas others are better at firing gold rounds.
Suggestion on that, we should put something in Slack and the website on those
Sounds good.
better money making tanks at the different tiers. Tier 6, tier 7, tier 8, because I know there's some people that struggle with credits. There's some that just don't have the time to play, that
Sure.
when they do
So
have
the other
time, they
mission
can use the
statement that
time
I send the
to take those
callers
better
off to
tanks if
is
they
you
have them.
need to be setting up your players for success. So that player base, some of them have the knowledge, some of them do not. You cannot assume that just because you made the call that they're going to do it. So you need to be nudging them along. You don't need to micromanage and tell them, okay, pull the trigger now. But you do need to manage your player base to the point where it's, if they're having problem on that focus and getting into, okay, that's the low health target, that's the one I need to shoot, once, maybe twice, call for that low health target. When you see that they're getting ready to swap to a new target, if they're not teeing up those targets, wait for them to kill that target and then be ready with that next target and call that next target and get them onto that next target. There is a certain level of micromanagement that you need to do. Okay, you guys need to play these tanks like this. This target first. So when you're talking and working with sub-callers as the overall caller, you need to say, all right, guys, I want you to play like this. Then you don't need to call those low health targets unless your sub-caller is dropping the ball and not doing that. But you need to be setting your guys up for success. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hey, got one question on that. In game, because we've done this many times, we start calling, whether it's you and Squid and I each have a group and we're calling the low health. But if our groups are close together, sometimes it confuses the other players. Should we designate it Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, or
So
Group A, B,
to answer that
C?
question,
So Group A focus 348 health. Group
my
B
voice is
focus,
pretty well recognized at this point. But I will still say super conks or heavies do such and such. I define who I am talking to so that that is not mistaken. And I try and keep it short, sweet, and simple. AdRack. Just like Chibi was talking about. That will reduce the confusion. I only put in what I need to so that I get my point across. If I say,
Yep.
super conks, you need to be focusing down these targets supporting these tanks. Short, sweet, simple. Get off the air so that the other callers can get their information out to their groups. And try not to cut off the other callers. unless you really need to step in and make a correction to your group, then try not to step on the other colors. That being said, the other thing is, as a sub-caller,
Right.
as we're training the new callers, I've done this a little bit here over the last couple nights, you may need to prompt the main caller. Squid was calling, I said, Squid, what do you want us to do? Even though the game was well in hand, I wasn't willing to let him just have his players do it. I wanted him to stay engaged in the call. So I said, Squid, what do you want us to do? Keep your primary caller active. Don't let him turn off. So, as a primary caller, you have to make sure that your sub-callers don't shut down. As a sub-caller, you have to make sure your primary caller doesn't shut down. The other thing that we're doing a lot of right now is the primary caller makes the call. That's what we're doing. We're not worried about the suggestions. We go to execute. Ask questions as to, how do you want me to play this? Do you want me to play this in a defensive role? Do you want me to play this area in an offensive role? Get that required information, but so that our callers can build up their confidence, we're not going, well, I think you should do this. We need to get that confidence built up. So we're not going to be doing the suggestions and second-guessing game right now. Because our callers are just not at the level where they can handle that. Does that make sense? And
Yep.
so
Yes.
as the primary
Most
caller
definitely.
or a sub-caller, if you get a prompt and a question, okay, Squid, what do you want us to do? Go, oh, I got to be involved in this. I got to be handed that information. I can't slip on it. Go ahead and try and then get spooled back up and get back active into it. But if you guys don't have any more questions, then that's all I got for you. So I really want you guys to be trying to take this information as you go into your
good.
advances, as you go into your strongholds.
Okay.
There's a lot of similarities. Let's take the Defender and the IS-7. There's a lot of similarities between those tanks. Understanding how that IS-7 works will help you in the other battles. So just try and remember those concepts and go forth. We have 31 players online, so I'd really like to see some of our callers go into that stronghold, and I'll get a booster going. And then we'll get ready for advances at 7. Yeah, in about an hour.
Well, yeah, just check first, because with this front line out, everybody's pretty tuned up about playing this front line. I don't know what. I don't know if they're going to be. I'm going to check, but I don't be too interested in strongholds because frontline's giving you a lot more XP and a lot more money.
Yeah,
Per
front line is
battle.
where you want to be to make money.
Yeah, I made, 4 battles, and I averaged 100,000 per battle. Take home.
Yeah,
Take
and
home.
you can have, I think, a 5-man platoon.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
platoon
it's not
part is
working
not working
yet.
yet. But yeah, that's the thing.
But yeah, when it's up and running, it's a moneymaker. You might even see strongholds suffer from it, because you can play. It can take you 15, 20 minutes to play one battle. There's 25 minutes, but I walked out a couple battles with 150,000
Yeah.
after taxes. In a loss, I made
Priority
100,000,
needs to be in getting the
I'm gonna
callers up
ask,
to
but
speed.
I
Frontline
think
will still
Frontline's
be
gonna be
there,
the thing
but
tonight.
Clan Wars, and
I
especially
would
with
rather.
reward tanks,
Separate.
shows up every once in a while. If we are serious and as a competitive clan, then we need to be focused on this Clan War season. Yes, so we are running out of time, which is why I crammed as many tanks in tonight as
And
I
that
did.
starts the 24th.
If you
correct?
need to review, I did stream this. Go back and watch the video and go over it if you need to. And again, we'll be going over a couple of the medium tanks here in the next day or two, maybe 3. So We want
So
the
are
landing
we-
tournaments.
Are we looking to capture land or just do tournament? The landing.
If we were as much of a threat as G
Okay.
was, we could take the land and we
Several
could
a
hold
night.
it and we could do it that way.
Yeah.
But we want the landing tournaments.
Yeah, I think we make out better with the landing tournaments. Get
All
the
right,
points,
with
get
that,
the
I'm
money,
going to go
get
ahead
the-
and end this, and I'm going to go find
stuff
dinner,
that
so I will be back.
Oh.
Steak, corn on the cob, and a salad.
What are we having? I'm hungry.
Anybody have any
Medium.
interest in doing a stronghold in this room?
I would run with you.
I'm ready for
So what-
Setting it up in 8 at the moment.
I got you, Squid, man. Whatever you want to do, bro.
Well, let's see if we can get together. I'd like to get together and
I want to
enough
see
for an
those
8,
callers
not maybe
alternating the
6s.
calls.
Now you need the more.
User disconnected from your channel.
All right.
Sure. PDX still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready for
Alright.